I earned my degree online at Arizona State University. I chose to get my degree at ASU because I knew that I'd get a quality education, they were recognized for excellence, and that I would be prepared for the workforce upon graduating. To be associated with ASU, both as a student and alum, it makes me extremely proud, and having experienced the program, I know now that I'm set up for success. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
What if purpose isn't a destination you find, but a direction you walk in every single day? So in today's episode, the purposeful and the poised Barbara Anne Gardenhire Mills. She joins me to talk about how to move forward even when life wants to hold you back. We'll talk about it right after this.
Educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Nevr Work, an award-winning podcast where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
So I thank you very much for listening today. So we are going to get right into it. Now, when life feels unclear, how do you keep moving? And without your purpose or without your peace, how is that possible? So Barbara Ann, can you please answer that type of question?
Absolutely. And it really begins with deciding or making a choice that even if you don't know what it is, you're going to get up. You're just going to get up. Even if you don't know what you're getting up for yet, you're going to get up. One of my favorite songs is actually from one of those little Christmas classics. And the one character talks about just put one foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking across the floor. Put one foot in front of the other, and soon you'll be walking out the door. Whether it is, and I work with people from all different walks of life in all different phases of their journey, neurodiversity, depression, anxiety. Almost 50% of the people I work with right now are in simultaneous coaching and therapy, and they ask this of themselves every day: what is my purpose? Why should I even get up? And my answer is, well, let's start with just the getting up part, and then we can work on the rest.
And it's funny how you utilized a childhood message. And sometimes we discount those subtle messages from our childhood. You know, sometimes we look at it as being silly, or, hey, that's for kids, and now I'm an adult. Like, I need to be something else. I need to be on another level. So how pivotal is that to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I need to tone it down a little bit and maybe think from a kid perspective, especially from a place of curiosity and transformation and all those things, you know, all those pieces. So how pivotal or important would that be for me to look from that child perspective?
Because every one of us has a child in us, inside of us. And every one of us, when we are in some type of a survival mode, draws on the skills and experiences that we used as children to get us to where we are now.
Right.
And some of those things can be our greatest superpowers when we are using them with deliberate intent and purpose, as well as from a place of responding to whatever we're facing. But when we were in a survival mode or reacting, those skill sets that we learned as children, whether it was through good things or traumatic things, those are the things that come out. And so one of the things I realized early on, not the least of which is I'm like probably the youngest 56-year-old you'll ever meet, but the phrase that there was a thing that was very popular at one point called everything I ever needed to know I learned in kindergarten. And there's a lot of truth to that. So a lot of times I will, as part of one of the many coaching modalities that I offer, one of which is positive intelligence, it encourages us to look at that inner wounded, scared, frightened, insecure child in everyone and meet them where they are so that they can then in turn be navigated out of that.
So that might require me to look in the mirror, and maybe I don't like the mirror. Maybe the mirror is cracked. Maybe it's a little faded on the edges because the gray paint has worn off, whatever it is. But for whatever reason, we don't like to do that. So because of the hurt and pain, because we want to move away from pain. So how would you encourage someone to look in the mirror, especially if they don't like what they see?
To really look in the mirror first starts with empathy for yourself, to be able to accept what you see. The number one, so I'll refer to positive intelligence again, because so much of what my company does is infused with it. And positive intelligence was based on a book written by Shirzad Shamin that turned into a coaching program, which turned into a worldwide movement. And one thing that every single human being has in common in terms of the things that get in our way and sabotage us is judgment. Judgment of ourselves, judgment of others, and judgment of circumstances. And so part of being able to look in that mirror and really love and accept the person that's reflected back starts with learning how to tame that judge.
You mentioned something about superpower, right? And I think being able to handle that judgment, lack of love, self-love, maybe even self-awareness, that is a superpower, trying to overcome that. But a lot of times we're not encouraged. We hear a lot of pessimistic thoughts and conversations that destroys that superpower. So how do we reinvent that? Because it was already there, so how do we reinvent it? Maybe reincarnate it, whatever, rebuild it, whatever it is. How do we get that superpower back?
Honestly, it starts with finding people who are what you want to become in some ways. Who we surround ourselves with, the energy that we accept into ourselves, what we read, what we watch, all of those things influence our perception or our lens of who we are and the rest of the world. And so part of that is reaching out and identifying people, whether it's a coach like myself or whether it's your spiritual leader or just your group of friends. Who are you keeping company with? Who is influencing your lens? Because that has a big impact on how you view the rest of the world and yourself.
Right. So I'm from Philly, and I think you're right across the bridge.
Yeah, I am right across the bridge. My dad's from Philly. I'm actually going to Philly tonight for an event. So 14 miles outside the city. So yeah.
And so I brought that up because sometimes, because you talked about maybe changing the table we sit at, changing our community, but a lot of times our community they're not accepting of us changing, and we think we're losing our friends. We're losing those other connections. And so how do we deal with that? If we see where we want to be, but the people that we associate with aren't quite there, and we don't want to leave them. How do we do that? How do we balance that?
That is an excellent question because it's not easy. The people that are in my life now are people that I wouldn't necessarily have imagined would be so pivotal to my life now as some of the people who were in my life 15, 20, 25 years ago. The company I keep is different. And it wasn't easy. There were definitely some losses along the way. But instead of focusing on what I was losing, part of the journey is learning to focus on what you're gaining in its place. So many people, let's start with redefining what happiness even is. Because so many people want happiness.
Right.
And to quote Shirzad, happiness is really having more positive thoughts in a day than you do negative thoughts in a day. It's not this toxic positivity. Everybody's happy all of the time. Everybody is a rah rah. That is not what happiness is.
Mm-hmm.
Happiness is knowing at the end of the day that you're loved unapologetically in many instances,
Mm-hmm.
authentically, and that you do the same. And that love is a verb and not a noun. It's not something that you have to earn. And finding people that will be there and support you because they love you, not because they expect anything in return. Because when you need them, if you're the one who's there for them, a lot of times you find that when you need them back,
Mm-hmm.
they may not be there. And so there's a lot of hard lessons, but the rewards are so significant
Mm-hmm.
that it's worth the price.
So how do we know the value if we were never taught the value? If we don't understand the value, we've never been there. And a lot of times people they put value on something that they could touch or someone else right next to them have touched. But if no one around me has put that value on that, i.e. that word love, or being in that environment, because even in environments that we've never been in, we don't know the love that we're going to receive, So how do we understand the true value of that very powerful 4-letter word?
And there's so many resources out there that can help people get started.
Mm-hmm.
The upside to social media is there's wonderful podcasts
Mm-hmm.
such as this, videos, people that you can follow on social media that have positive messages
Mm-hmm.
on everything from how to know if you're in a relationship with a narcissist or if you are a narcissist, because narcissism itself is a scale. There's narcissistic personality disorder, but then there's narcissism. And that's born out of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the things that people are looking for externally can only be found internally, which is why they're seeking. And there are resources out there that can help you redirect that energy inward. It's really just a matter of finding them. And you know it when you hear it because it resonates with you. What might work, I don't like to give examples because what might work for one person doesn't work for another.
Correct.
That's why I have no problem having a network of other coaches I know.
Right.
My thing is, if you can have McDonald's and Burger King and Taco Bell all survive on the same corner, that's because everybody has different needs and different tastes at different times.
Mm-hmm.
And there is expertise out there in open source, no cost content
Mm-hmm.
that can help people really get started. Some of them, it's very complex. Eckhart Tolle's New Earth. That was the book that resonated with me. Read it 5 times back to back during a pivotal time in my life.
Wow.
There are other books, other stories, a wealth of information out there that are on everything from TikTok to YouTube.
Right.
That can help people, where you can just Google, I'm unhappy. How do I get happy?
Mm-hmm.
That's another upside to AI.
Yes. Right.
AI is really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually ask AI to do things like analyze my Facebook feed and tell me what it says about.
Right. Right.
And those tools, when used for the power of good, can really help provide insight to kind of helping point you in the direction of the community.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to use tribe. I used to use tribe, but tribe implies you're united against or something, and community is united around something.
Mm-hmm.
And the tools that are out there, the communities that are out there, can help you find yours. And that is a great place to get started. One of the things they say all the time is all transformational change starts the same, and it starts with a choice.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to be honest with you, because of the space that I'm in, you said a whole bunch of different things. I'm trying to figure out which way to go. But I think one of the things that I'm going to point out just across the board, it's a different way of thinking outside the box, right? Because everything, coaching, therapy, AI, some things are going to require you to think outside the box. Everything is not cookie cutter, and it can't be the same across the board because everyone has had different experiences, right?
Exactly.
And so you and I are from the Philadelphia area, right? But because we are from the Philadelphia area, it doesn't necessarily mean we had the same Philadelphia experiences, right?
Right.
And we probably have, what they say, you're like 2 or 3 handshakes away from knowing another person. So with us being in the area, we might be one, right? But even with that, that's a different experience. So the reality is that we need to think outside the box when it comes to thinking about our purpose and the direction that we're going in, because there's no right nor wrong way for an individual.
Exactly. My company, Purpose-Filled Solutions and Evolutions, our actual company, it's what we do.
Right.
Our overarching vision starts with the belief, the true belief that we're here to foster a world where every uniquely created or made human B-E, capital, being, can be their perfectly made or created self in full authenticity. And our tools just happen to be coaching, training, and other work that we do that helps leaders to create environments where people can be that in the workplace. Which also means that we're often doing that for the leaders that don't even realize that they need it themselves.
Right.
To your point, it is a total change in mindset. Most of the people that we start with, most of us start out with what we call a fixed mindset or a measurement mindset, as described by Benjamin and Rosamund Zander, who wrote a book called The Art of Possibility. He's a composer. Book that I was introduced to in grad school. Went very late to grad school. It's never too late.
It's never.
As you will learn if you read the book, The Art of Possibilities. But we're taught, the world that we live in is designed to compare against others instead of compare against who we were yesterday or who we were the day before. And that self-love and self-care is not selfish. It's essential to being there for others. And interestingly, I talked about in another podcast, one day I was watching a series of TikTok videos and people kept saying they were very disillusioned by our current political climate here in the United States, but other parts of the world as well. And like 3 or 4 different videos, people kept saying, I was brought up as a Christian. I was told I should love my neighbor as myself. I should love my neighbors. And the 4th time I looked at the video and I actually said out loud, we do. Most people do actually love their neighbors as themselves. Because they don't love themselves, they can't love their neighbor. And I spoke with someone earlier this week. He shared with me he'd spent $100,000 in courses and retreats and self-help books. And it was finding one valuable mentor who met him where he was that totally changed his life and turned him into what one of his clients eventually gave the title, the Doctor of Self-Worth.
Nice.
But nice. One mentor changed everything for him.
I think as I'm listening to you, again, you're really a wealth of knowledge. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like you
more
really,
than we could share in 25 minutes. I know,
right? But when we think about being in the workforce, our 9 to 5, sometimes we don't understand that we still have a voice in that. We feel powerless in that. Or we're envious and jealous of our coworker because they got Employee of the Month, or this department over here might have gotten a raise and we didn't. Whatever it is, there's always these forces that are clouding our judgment, clouding that mirror, and understanding what we are really worth in those situations. And I use that because I think that's most people that listen to this show, they are still working, but not quite 100% entrepreneurs yet. So they're in transition spaces. And so I think that's something that we deal with, or those individuals are dealing with every day, and not understanding really what their self-worth is and what it really is to just love themselves, because they're so busy looking at the other person next to them.
Yes. And they can't compare themselves. They're not that other person. That's not their lens. That's not their experiences. Even twins.
Right.
You can't compare them, because one different thing in a twin's life can change how they view it from their identical twin. And so, especially for entrepreneurs tend to want to have what they see other entrepreneurs have. And that's not what entrepreneurship is about. And this is coming from somebody who's been doing work in business development for 27 of 33 years. And entrepreneurship is about true entrepreneurship is about doing what you're passionate and firmly believe is your calling, even when you don't like it. When I was with the Small Business Administration, we would tell people entrepreneurship is the only thing that you leave a steady job and a steady paycheck with set hours to go work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether it's physically or mentally.
Right.
Because you're living your business.
Right.
Or whatever, because you can be an entrepreneur in other areas. Not just having your own company. You can be an entrepreneurial leader within a company. And you can lead from any chair.
What? So, again, you keep putting out these nuggets, Barbara, because sometimes we don't take ownership in that seat, right? Because, again, we still feel powerless. We don't understand that we can manage the manager. We can manage the director, right? You get what I mean? Because we feel powerless. And I think that's a great... We're going to have part 2 of this. I'm going to be honest with you. We really are.
Oh, good. Yes.
Because everyone that's listening, are you really... I just wonder if you're really hearing what Barbara Anne is sharing with you today, that you have the power. It's already built in.
Yes. In fact, we don't even use the word empowerment anymore. I caught on for a while in the field, and it never felt right to me. And that was because we're born with the power. So let's take it back to the children. When we're children, we don't fear. We learn to fear. We learn to not love. We learn things. We're born very trusting, very explorative, very curious.
Right.
Because coaching is a good coach is all about curiosity. I'll put that out there. If you're looking for a coach, you don't want someone who does all the talking. You want someone who does all the listening.
Right.
And asks open-ended questions to prompt you to find your answers. But we start out without that fear, without that curiosity, and with a level of power. And whether it's through circumstances taken from us or it's eroded over time, we acquiesce or we give it up. But just like Dorothy always knew how to get home in the Wizard of Oz, she always knew the way. We all still have that power in us. And so we've borrowed the term in power. We help you rediscover what you had all along and remember who you are. Which, again, we're going to say, what did Simba's dad say to him? Remember who you are.
Right.
That's part of what we do, is we help people remember who they are. Remember that, no, you do have power. You may not be able to control all of the circumstances, but you can control how you respond to them.
Most definitely. And so, I have to say, I really, really appreciate you coming on today. I mean, I know you're busy, like you said, you gotta, skedaddle. But I really appreciate you, because you've offered so much information and value to the show today. And as I told you from the beginning, it's not scripted. For anyone that wants to start a podcast, this is true authenticity at its best.
100%.
And so for those individuals that are looking to find their way back home because they've lost and they can't find Toto or whatever it might be, how can they reach out to you where you can assist them to find their home?
We're easy to find. Our website is we have multiple versions all pointing to the same place, but purposefilled the letter S and E.com. You can just Google Purpose-Filled Solutions and Evolutions. We're also on LinkedIn, Facebook, Alignable, TikTok, YouTube. We have a couple pages because you're going to come on as a guest on my podcast, What the Why. And so if you look up Barbara Anne Gardenhire Mills, there was only one other Barbara Anne Gardenhire that I even knew of. She was my aunt. She passed. So you should have no problem finding Barbara Anne Gardenhire Mills. It's a name you just kind of don't forget once you remember how to pronounce it or spell it. So if you Google that, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn and other forms of social media as well.
Nice. So I appreciate you coming on. But I have one more question before I let you go. Absolutely. I ask this question to all my guests. It's a question that has no boundaries. So think outside the box. Use your imagination, right? It's my would you rather question. Would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
Ooh. Honestly, I've had so many forks in the road, I'm more comfortable with that. There's even a song that I sang when I was in choir called The Road Not Taken, based on a poem. And so that is what I would choose.
Nice.
Fork in the road.
Nice and simple.
Yeah.
Nothing deep, nothing like
Let's see where that road heads.
Nice. Right. No, and I appreciate that because sometimes we make things a little more complicated than they need to be. I appreciate that answer. And I thank you very much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I look forward to having you on my show, and I'll come back anytime you'd like me to.
And of course, everyone, thank you very much for listening. All of Barbara Anne Gardenhire Mills information will be here in the show notes. So if you're driving, walking, biking, hiking, whatever it is, on Mount Everest, whatever it is, we hope that you will click on her links, follow her website, and look at all the great information she offers. Again, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you to all your fans and listeners.
And of course, look out for me on her show. Thank y'all very much for listening, and I'll talk to y'all just a little bit later.
Thanks for listening. Follow Maurice Chism on social media to stay connected and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work. Or will it?